Hi everyone, welcome back to our channel. In this video, we will discuss some great ICs that you can try as a beginner. So without further ado, let's start with the 555 timer IC is one of the most popular ICs ever made, and honestly, one of the best starting points for beginners. It's basically a timing IC, which means it can generate delays or create continuous on and off signals, also called pulses. You can control these delays and pulses just by changing a few external components, mainly resistors and capacitors. And that's exactly why it's used in so many simple projects and small electronic products. For example, in this circuit, this small 8-pin IC is flashing an LED roughly once every second, so about a 1 Hz signal. And if I change the value of the resistor or the capacitor, I can easily control how fast the LED blinks. Since I'm using a potentiometer here, when I rotate it, you can see the blinking speed change in real time. Now this particular setup is called the stable mode, where the output is continuously switching between high and low. It never stays stable in one state. Here you can control things like frequency and duty cycle. If you want specific values for frequency and duty cycle, you don't have to calculate everything manually. There are plenty of online calculators available. I'll link some in the description below. You just need to enter your desired values, and it will give you the component values directly. Apart from this, there are two other important modes, monostable and bistable. This is the monostable mode. In this case, when I press this button, the output goes high for a fixed duration and then automatically comes back to low. Since it returns to its original state, it's called monostable. And just like before, you can adjust this time period using resistors and capacitors. And finally, we have the bistable mode. In this mode, the output doesn't change automatically, it stays in whatever state it was in. Here, I have two inputs connected, one to set the output high and the other to reset it back to low. So when I press this button, the LED turns on, and it stays on even after I release it, and only when I press the other button, it turns off. And once you understand these modes, you can build a wide range of useful circuits, like LED flashers, tone generators, simple alarm systems, or even basic motor speed controllers. So, now that we can generate pulses using the 555 timer IC, what if we want to use those signals to control multiple outputs one by one? That's where the CD4017 comes in. It's basically a decade counter IC, which means it takes a clock signal as input and activates its 10 outputs one at a time in sequence. And this is exactly what I'm showing here. I've connected the clock input of the IC to the 555 timer, and the outputs are connected to 10 LEDs. So as the 555 timer generates pulses, you can see the LEDs turning on one after another, creating this running light effect. And once it reaches the last output, it resets and starts again from the beginning, creating a continuous loop. You can also control the speed of this running pattern simply by adjusting the frequency of the input signal. In this case, by changing the timing components of the 555 timer. And one more really useful feature is that you can cascade multiple ICs together. So instead of being limited to just 10 outputs, you can connect another CD4017 and extend the sequence even further. Before we move forward, a word from our sponsor. If you're working on electronics projects, you know how important it is to have an ECAD environment that keeps your designs organized and reliable. A good workflow should offer clear version control, rule-based checks, real-time collaboration, and visibility into component availability so you can move from concept to a manufacturable board with fewer mistakes. That's the approach Altium focuses on, helping engineers maintain consistency and manage their projects more efficiently. And for students who want to learn these skills early, there's Altium Student Lab. It's a free learning program that introduces professional design workflows through guided lessons, a cloud workspace, collaboration tools, and certification. To get more details, visit the link in the description. So what if you want to control each LED individually? That's where the 74HC595 comes in. It's basically a shift register IC, which means it takes data serially, one bit at a time, and then converts it into parallel outputs. This gives you much more control compared to the CD4017. Here, I'm controlling all 8 LEDs using just 3 pins of my ESP32 board. These are typically called the data, clock, and latch pins. The idea is simple. The ESP32 continuously generates data values from 0 to 255 and sends them one bit at a time through the data pin. Each time the clock pin receives a pulse from the ESP, that bit is stored inside the IC and shifted to the next position. After all 8 bits are sent, the state of all 8 outputs is defined, determining exactly which LEDs should be on or off. Once the entire byte is loaded, the ESP triggers the latch pin, causing all the outputs to update simultaneously. This allows the LEDs to change together instantly instead of one by one. As the value keeps changing from 0 to 255 inside the loop, different binary patterns are generated automatically, creating continuously changing LED animations. Another big advantage is pin saving. Normally, to control 8 LEDs, you would need 8 separate pins, but with this IC you can do it using just 3 pins. And just like before, you can also cascade multiple shift registers together. So if one IC gives you 8 outputs, 2 ICs can give you 16, and so on, without increasing the number of control pins. So this IC is extremely useful when you're working with microcontrollers like Arduino or ESP32, where the number of available pins is limited. Now, what if you want a circuit to actually make decisions based on inputs? That's where logic gates come in. These are the fundamental building blocks of digital electronics. In simple terms, they take one or more input signals, usually high or low, and based on a rule, they decide what the output should be. Now let's understand this with a simple setup. Here, I have 2 switches acting as inputs and one LED as the output. If I use an AND gate, the LED will turn on only when both switches are on, so both conditions must be true at the same time. This is the symbol of an AND gate, and right below is its truth table, which shows all the possible combinations of inputs and their corresponding outputs. The IC that I am using here is the 74HC08. It has 16 pins with 4 separate AND gates inside it. In this circuit, I am using one of them to demonstrate the logic. Now, if I replace the exact setup with the CD4071, or gate IC, the behavior changes. Here, the LED turns on even if just one of the switches is on, so only one condition needs to be true, as you can also see in its truth table. And then there's the NOT gate, also called an inverter, which simply reverses the input. If the input is on, the output becomes off, and if the input is off, the output becomes on. There are other logic gates as well, like XOR and NOR, but these 3 form the basic building blocks. And what's really interesting is that by combining multiple logic gates together, you can build much more complex decision-making circuits. So even though we don't see them directly, logic gates are constantly working in the background, controlling how signals are processed and how outputs behave. So now we can make decisions using logic gates, but what if we want the circuit to actually remember something? That's where flip-flops come in. A flip-flop is a basic memory element in digital electronics. It can store a single bit of data, either a high or a low, and hold that state until it is changed by an input. Now to demonstrate how a flip-flop stores data, I've connected 2 push buttons as the J and K inputs of the CD4027 IC and an LED as the output indicator. For the clock signal, I'm using this larger push button connected to 5 volts. First, when I press the J button, the J input becomes high. But notice, the LED still remains off. That's because the flip-flop only checks the inputs when it receives a clock pulse. Now, the moment I press the clock button, the flip-flop reads the inputs. Since J is high and K is low, the output gets set, meaning the Q output becomes high and the LED turns on. Now, even after I release the J button, the LED stays on. The input is no longer high, but the flip-flop remembers its last state. That's exactly why it acts as a memory element. Next, when I press the K button and give another clock pulse, the flip-flop again reads the inputs. This time K is high and J is low, so the output gets reset. As a result, the Q output becomes low, and the LED turns off. And that's the key idea behind flip-flops. They store information. Once again, helpful resources and an in-depth tutorial are given in the description. So far, everything we've seen was digital. Signals were either high or low. But in real-world applications, most signals don't come in that form. Sensors like temperature sensors, light sensors, or microphones produce very small analog voltages, not clean high or low signals. And before we can use these signals in digital circuits, they require signal conditioning. And that's where the operational amplifier comes in. An operational amplifier is an IC that is designed to amplify the difference between two input voltages. It has two input pins, one called the non-inverting input and the other called the inverting input. The IC continuously compares these two inputs, and based on their difference, it drives the output accordingly. And by using something called the negative feedback, which is essentially connecting the output back to the inverting input, you can control exactly how much amplification you want. Let's look at a simple circuit I have built using the LM358 op-amp in a simple amplifier configuration. I have provided a small input voltage to one of the input pins, and using a couple of resistors, I've set the gain of the amplifier. What this basically means is that the IC will take the difference between the two input voltages and multiply it by a certain factor, so even a very small input signal becomes much larger at the output. One important thing to understand here is that the output of the op-amp is always limited by the supply voltage. So if I'm powering this IC with, say, 5 volts, the output cannot go beyond that range. Also, the LM358 is quite useful because it can operate with a single power supply, and it works well even with low voltages, which makes it very beginner-friendly and ideal for projects using microcontrollers. Now, instead of amplifying a signal, sometimes we just want to compare it with a reference and make a decision. That's where a comparator comes in. I'm using the LM339 here, which contains 4 comparators inside a single IC. A comparator works very similarly to an op-amp. It also has 2 input pins. But instead of giving a proportional output, it simply compares the 2 inputs and gives a digital-like output. If the voltage at the non-inverting input is higher than the inverting input, the output goes high, and if it's lower, the output goes low. Now in this circuit, I've connected a simple light-dependent resistor, or LDR, along with a reference voltage to the IC. The LDR is basically a sensor whose resistance changes based on light intensity. When there is more light, its resistance decreases, and when it's dark, its resistance increases. This change in resistance causes voltage across it to change as well in a voltage divider setup. Because of this, the voltage at the input of the comparator also changes with light. So instead of a fixed voltage, we now have a signal that varies continuously depending on the surroundings. On the other input, I've set a fixed reference voltage using a resistor divider. This acts like a threshold level that we want to compare against. Now the comparator continuously compares these 2 voltages, the one coming from the LDR and the reference voltage. So when the light intensity increases or decreases and crosses that threshold, the comparator instantly switches its output. You can see that happening here. When I cover the LDR, the voltage changes and the LED turns on, and when I expose it to light again, it turns off. The L293D is a motor driver IC that allows you to control up to 2 DC motors using low-power control signals. Unlike LEDs or small circuits, motors require much higher current, and you cannot drive them directly using logic circuits or microcontrollers. So this IC acts as a bridge between low-power control signals and high-power devices like motors. It contains something called an H-bridge inside, which allows you to control the direction of the motor. So depending on the inputs you provide, you can make the motor rotate forward or reverse. Here, I've connected a simple DC motor to the output pins of the IC, and I'm controlling it using 2 buttons as input signals. When I set one input high and the other low, the motor rotates in one direction, and when I reverse the inputs, the motor rotates in the opposite direction. If both inputs are the same, either high or low, the motor stops. There is also an enable pin, which acts like a master control. When it is high, the motor runs, and when it is low, the motor stops completely. So far, we've focused on how signals are generated, processed, and used to control circuits. But all of these circuits rely on one thing: a stable power supply. In real-world applications, power sources such as batteries or unregulated adapters often produce fluctuating voltages. However, most electronic components, including logic ICs, sensors, and microcontrollers, require a stable, fixed voltage to function reliably. And that's exactly what this IC does. It takes a varying or higher input voltage and regulates it down to a constant voltage. The IC I'm using in this circuit is the L7806, which gives a fixed 6-volt output. In this setup, I've connected a higher voltage input to the IC, and at the output, I consistently get a stable 6-volt supply. One important thing to keep in mind is that the input voltage must always be higher than the output, typically at least around 7 to 8 volts for proper regulation. Also, since this is a linear regulator, the extra voltage is dissipated as heat, so in higher current applications you might need a heatsink. You'll also often see capacitors connected at the input and output of the regulator. These help filter out noise and keep the output stable. Apart from fixed voltage regulators like the L7806, there are also variable voltage regulators. A popular example is the LM317. Instead of getting a fixed 5 volts or 6 volts, you can set the output to any desired value within a certain range. This makes them very useful when you're experimenting, or when your circuit requires different voltage levels. So, if you've made it this far, then drop a like and subscribe to our channel to keep supporting us. We will be back with some great ideas soon. Till then, goodbye.